let's move ahead with the technological presentation where visibility blind spots in BFSI. And to put some light on this topic, I shall call upon Alex George, Country Manager, India and South Asia from Riverbed Technology. Can we have a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen? Well, Alex George, Country Manager, India and South Asia, Riverbed Technology, he is the someone who helps the customers, and he actually loves helping the customers, and he tries to help them out to make the most of their assets to enhance their business. That's not all. He also helps them to get the performance, mitigate risk and increase revenues. He works closely with customers C-suite to provide seamless, unified and observability experience into their IT assets across networks and applications. The goal is to ensure Riverbed grow with the customers and partners and create a growth ecosystem which fuels a partnership built basically on trust. Well, he has built team across sales, pre-sales channels and professional services in India and provided an environment of learning and an ability to revamp and ramp a team to deliver on the region's commitment in the shortest time learning curve possible. He has worked with a lot of organizations like Hitachi, Data Systems, Suns Microsystems, Wipro, and etc. Ladies and gentlemen, can we have a huge round of applause for Alex George?
Well, that was a short introduction, and I think that kind of covered my entire journey of 26, 27 years in the industry. I would first like to welcome all, and I think it's a privilege and an honor to be here on stage. It's a privilege because it's been 2 years since I've got this opportunity to actually be on stage and talk and meet to people physically, right? And how many of you all will agree to the fact that when you lose something is when you actually realize the importance of not having that with you, right? Being a sales guy for all these years, to be confined for 2 years and not meeting people is probably the worst thing that can happen to a sales guy, right? So I'm genuinely privileged, and I thank you all for this opportunity. And I'm honored to be presenting to this august crowd of banking and financial, the ecosystem that we have here. Now, I would like to take you through quickly what Riverbed journey is and what Riverbed journey was when we started off. And we just celebrated our 20 years last year. So it's been quite a long journey for us in India as well. The topic is illuminate, accelerate, and empower. I mean, it is too many of these adjectives and words which kind of confuse people, and that is probably the topic of the day. Riverbed started off at a time in history when banks, especially governed by regulatory requirements and compliances, was mandated to have something called as a DC and a DR and ensure that you have your BCP plans in place from a ZDL point of view, etc. Now, the critical part at that point in time was to ensure that the data would move from DC to DR. It could be replication, it could be backup, it could be archive. All of those kind of come together from a BCP standpoint is within the limits that is prescribed by the business as well as by the industry, right? And Riverbed played a role at that point in time to ensure that we provided a technology called WAN optimization, and that is the inception of Riverbed, right? Most of the banks, not just in India, globally as well, and a lot of other industries, used Riverbed WAN optimization to ensure that the BCP plan was adhered to and the replication was completed within the RPO, which is governed by the organization as well as the industry, right? So WAN optimization is where Riverbed, the brand, the trust, the reliability, and the respect in the industry was earned over the period of time. Now, what did that translate to? Since we've been, in that journey for the longest time, we have approximately around 300 plus patents just on the WAN optimization technology, which is basically making sure that everything that moves, right, on the IP link on a long distance is at the fastest possible time, and with whatever is the link available at a time in history. I'm sure most of the guys who've been in the banking industry would realize and would accept the fact that bandwidth was very scarce. It was not easily available for anybody to just even pay and buy, and it was quite costly, right? So whatever was available was the bandwidth that we had to use to ensure the data that was growing with the business was moved from point A to point B using the WAN optimization technology. And we continue to build on that and innovate on that, and we have approximately, like I said, 300 odd patents to that. Globally, we have almost over 95% we cover with that technology, 95% of the Fortune 500, and probably 77% and more of the Forbes Global 500. Now, the respect that we earned, the trust that we earned by delivering on a solution which was very critical, relevant at that point in time, is what we bring to the table when we pivoted from WAN optimization to what we today call as the visibility stack from Riverbed. The visibility stack from Riverbed has been renamed very recently as Alluvio, right? Now, visibility itself is a terminology that is pretty new, because it is very interchangeably used and probably also very loosely used between what we call as visibility, between monitoring and observability. Now, all these terminologies is basically something to do with what you have pretty much used to in the NOC and the SOC, having those NOC walls and having all those TV screens showing you, the spikes and lows and the pie charts and the red, amber, green, to showcase to you how is the health of the ecosystem that you have built for your end users and your employees to use and deliver and grow your business. Now, that journey was in a siloed fashion, because just to go back on that, and some of the customer logos that we have acquired, I just want to highlight on that, and some of them at the bottom from India as well. And it is what gives us the respect and the trust to go back to the same set of customers and to acquire the new customers in the banking and the financial space, because probably the largest, the most complex, and the most scalable logos are with Riverbed, right? Now, the journey of visibility, what I speak about, is something that has been there from the time of having siloed tools. When you buy a server, you get a tool which will tell you what exactly is happening with that server. If you buy a storage, you get something that tells you what's happening with the storage. And similarly, with a network device, a switch or a router and the likes of all of that, right? It is where an individual tool was used from a visibility standpoint to know the health and to do the management of that particular device or the network or the link, etc. From that journey, we moved to something called as unified visibility. And this is probably the infrastructure or the ecosystem that you would have. And it was always siloed as an approach, where you will have end users, desktops or the laptops being managed by an FMS or a service provider. Similarly, the applications would come with their own tools to know whether there is a problem with the application, the code, or the server that is running that application. Similarly for network, as well as the infra, the underlying infra that is there, right? Now, what did that do? It basically told you that there are 4 different teams looking at 4 different windows, and each trying to figure out, is the problem with me? Not exactly trying to look at what is the problem, and could that be a problem that could be resolved by looking at 4 different windows at 4 different time slabs, and trying to pinpoint and triangulate and find out what the problem is. It was pure manual effort, right? It's a pure manual correlation of data, where at 9 o'clock in the morning, if a user, either an internal employee or an end user, was to have a click of a button to either access a service or a product on your website, is now facing a performance issue, and then you would possibly get a call from that end customer or the end user saying that, oh, I tried to, submit a form, access a data, but for some reason that, it is taking too much time. It's a pure English statement which says that there is an issue with your ecosystem. Now, what does that do? Today, and back then, would just have an operational ticket raised and all teams getting into a firefighting mode, the application guy trying to use their tool, the network guy, the storage guy, the server guy, the infra guy, all of them having their own siloed tools to look into to just say, the problem is not with me, right? So manual correlation then led to very skilled, labor who would write a line of code and custom scripts which will now look into all of these siloed monitoring tools and try to correlate and find where the problem lies. And all of this, and I can tell you for sure, having worked with the largest banks, can go from 24 hours to 48 hours to 72 hours and probably weeks and months. And you would still probably do a trial and error, and the fastest and the easiest would be to restart whatever is not working, right? And then hope that it solves the problem. Now, what we are trying to bring to this space is, obviously these are all the, trial and error. And what we are trying to bring to this space is the importance of visibility, and then come back and educate the customers. What is the impact of not having the visibility into your ecosystem? What is the impact of that on your brand value? What is the impact of that on your IT operations? What is the impact of that on your business operations? And each of these things, being a blind spot, kind of touches upon the KRAs and KPIs of a CEO or a COO or a CIO or even today the CDO and etc. Right? And each one is possibly looking at different teams to tell them and feed them with data, with information, to say where could be the possible problem. But it is all manual. It is all basically hoping and expecting that you would get some data which will pinpoint and tell you where the problem lies. So the trust that we build in the WAN optimization era, we bring exactly the same trust of the solution into the visibility space. And like they say, the proof of the pudding is in eating it. And the fact that the largest bank or the largest banks in the country, the largest security firms in the country, they continue to believe and trust the Riverbed brand when we pivoted from the WAN optimization technology to what we today call the unified observability platform. And the fact that, like I said, it's visibility, monitoring, and observability being also new, the problems that it faces, and the fact that it is also new that it takes a while for you to get used to the word observability. It took me a while. You need to repeat it a couple of times to get that pretty right. You are used to using visibility and monitoring, but observability is what the mature model of the visibility looks like today. And I'll take you through the journey of what the difference is. Now, monitoring as a technology, as a solution, is something that you're pretty much aware of because it is, the likes of Riverbed and our friends in the industry from other vendors as well have been doing a great job in trying to get the customer base educated to understand what an application performance monitoring is, what a network performance monitoring is, what the infra performance monitoring is. And these are all terminologies that you're pretty much used to, and you've heard this much in time, but they again continue to be 3 different or 4 different silos of monitoring solutions where you would use an application performance monitoring solution from a vendor A, a network performance monitoring from a vendor B, and end user from a vendor C, etc., 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 and still would look at 4 different windows, hoping that you would be able to gather and pinpoint between these are monitoring solutions, these are performance monitoring solutions. They are ideally supposed to tell you what are the performance hotspots and help you resolve and and make your business back again in the shortest possible time. But even in that journey, somewhere, banks and financial institutions, as and when there was an operational issue, as and when there was an IT issue, as and when there was a brand issue which impacted, the organization, they have all acquired, invested, bought, implemented at various points in time. So no enterprise customer today would have less than, and this is an industry norm, would have less than 5 to 10 monitoring solutions in their ecosystem. And the fact is, it's all bought in various periods of time, in various problems of time, where the investment is already made. Now, what Riverbed is trying to do in this space is trying to make the most of the investments that you have already made. We are not trying to tell you that it's going to be a sweep it all and buy Riverbed and replace it all. We have come out with our solutions, which basically now have third-party integrations and work with most of the investments that you have already made, and we can actually build the entire monitoring suite for you from grounds up in a stack model. So if you have already invested in something called as an application performance monitoring, you could start with the network performance monitoring, build on it, mature it, scale it, add the application metrics to it, and then make it into a unified visibility platform, right? Now, in that journey, this is how the visibility journey has been for most of the largest enterprises in the world, where you have some SNMP, WMI, CLI-based monitoring solutions. You would have all heard of Wireshark, and it's been very widely used. It's part of Riverbed. Riverbed invests in it, and it is our academic license that we give it for free for universities and colleges and students to basically do their research, etc. So Wireshark is basically a Riverbed product. So from there, how you went through the journey of having network device configurations from a switch, router, and all of that, and then move into now monitoring the packets which are generated by the transactions from the click of the end user button. The flow, the device, and then that gets into the real user monitoring of how an application that has been rolled out by a bank, let's say it's a new mobile app or an internet banking app or a new portal that you have launched for your end users, for your customers, your agents, how is that performing in real time? Is it actually able to deliver and accept applications, fill in the applications, submit the applications, commit the applications in the shortest possible time without having any performance issues, which could be related to a link, could be related to the bandwidth issues, could be related to the ports, could be related to the devices, could be related to the underlying infra from a server, storage, all of that point of view. So there comes the real user monitoring, and then obviously something that you would do from creating scenarios as to what could be a potential problem and trying to find out those hotspots using the synthetic transaction monitoring. And from here is where Riverbed starts to play the transformation role, the innovation role, bringing in new technologies which now can be customizable based on the KPIs and KRAs of the roles and responsibilities that individuals have in their organization. So if a CEO wants to look at an IT metric which gives him an insight about what is the business going to grow into, and is my underlying ecosystem strong enough, good enough, scalable enough to handle the volumes, he has their own customized dashboard. Same goes for the CIO, for the COO, and the likes of them who are all looking at it from a business and an IT point of view. Obviously, when you drill down and come down, you get into the operation level, you have a network operations guy, you have an admin who's basically looking at things to make sure that everything is running fine from a day-to-day basis from a health metric perspective. And now we take that journey and invest the big $1 million to make sure that how do we bring in the next level of AI and the so-called machine learning capabilities to ensure that we can now automate some of that you would ideally do from a manual perspective and bring in the automated remediation feature for all the data that you've been capturing and analyzing. How do I use that data to make sure that I am able to create run books and playbooks and have IT operations put that into my system so that now it can look at those threshold values, and the moment it breaches a certain response time or a certain performance metric, it will trigger and then do the auto remediation for you by running that script that you have in the playbook, right? Now, I'm just going to get into a bit of what the Riverbed portfolio terminology and the nomenclature is. The portfolio is called the Alluvio portfolio, and that comes from something that marketing came up with, and it's the gold standard of visibility. Alluvio is a mix of alluvium as a mineral that is found by the riverbed, which is basically gold, and O is from observability, which I said is the new terminology in the visibility space. So alluvium and observability becomes Alluvio. That is a new branding that we have for our visibility portfolio. Now, this is how our journey has been in correlation to what I just showcased earlier in terms of how NetIM, which is an infrastructure monitoring, looking into your servers and all of those underlying devices, and can give you the health metrics using a SNMP, WMI, CLI, and all of the scripting part of it, right? The profiler is basically what looks into and captures and analyzes the full fidelity flow of how the transaction traverses through your entire ecosystem and gives you all the metrics related to throughput, interconnect devices, and through the entire journey from the user's click all the way back to the response to that end user. The response, the Alluvio app response, is a packet capture and analysis solution, which basically captures every single packet at a microsecond level, at a raw packet I'm talking about, at a microsecond level, and which is extremely critical for a banking customer. And that is where Riverbed has a unique identity in the visibility space, because we are the only ones who capture raw packets at a microsecond level with a full fidelity packet capture and stores that data to be analyzed back in history, in future, to create a historical trend which can tell you that 3 months back at 9 o'clock in the morning, this particular branch, when they clicked on the core banking application, how was that performing vis-a-vis today, when at 9 o'clock the same user is clicking? Is there an improvement, degradation, or is there a hotspot or a bottleneck? Is there a challenge for this application to service that end customer who's sitting in the branch servicing your customers, right? And all of this comes together into something called as an Alluvio portal, which is the dashboarding aspect of it. Now, I would again want to take 2 steps back and give you the difference between when somebody says that I have an integrated visibility portfolio versus a unified visibility portfolio. An integrated visibility portfolio could be that you have the visibility from an infra, from the flow, from a packet, they all coming onto a single window, but then you need to then click on it and open another window to go and analyze that. And a unified observability means the metrics coming from a network, a metric coming from a user, from an infra, and from the application is now correlated using an analytics engine. And what you see on the dashboard is that how was my application performing at 9 o'clock in the morning through my entire network ecosystem, servicing end user Alex, sitting in the branch in Guwahati, accessing the core banking application. Now that is what I call a unified visibility or observability, where I am now taking the metrics from every single critical element in my ecosystem and analyzing them at the point in time to tell you exactly what the problem is or could be, because it is predictive in nature, right? What we have done is we have taken that entire journey into what we call as the Alluvio IQ, is a SaaS platform which can now help you create your run books and playbooks, what you would ideally have from your SOP standpoint, for the business continuity standpoint, saying that if there is a fluctuation in the link, it goes beyond a certain threshold, this is what the network admin is supposed to do. He's supposed to, restart or do X, Y, Z. Now, that entire thing can be created as an SOP and can be put into the system, which can now be run manually or automated depending on what thresholds you have set in the system, right? So these are domain specific. What I talked about is visibility, and what I'm talking about where the future lies is called the unified observability, right? Now, I know this is a bit of a complex and a tongue twister statement, but it took me a while to get to that, to think that should I actually read it out or should I let you read it out? The fact is, by the time you read this and you understand what the actual statement means, the Alluvio should ideally be able to pinpoint and tell you what the problem is in your ecosystem. It is a bit of a tongue twister, but that is the vision that we have for Alluvio, and that's what it does in terms of dynamically ensuring that all your contextual data is now captured, analyzed, and then presented it back to you to make sure that you're able to look into one single window. Imagine a pie chart which says server, client, infra, and application. And between red, amber, green, it tells you exactly my infra is red. I am not really calling up 4 different teams to tell me what or where does the problem lie. I would only click on it, drill down, and go and find if it is an infra, is the infra my network switch, my router, my firewall, my load balancer, or something which is related to in my network. And then I'm able to tell the particular team that here lies the problem, please resolve it, right? Imagine a scenario like that. And that is exactly what we are delivering today to the banks and the largest financial institutions in the world, where they are looking and creating these simple, easy to understand dashboards, which are looking like the spikes, highs and lows, the pie charts with the red, amber, green, telling you exactly where the problem lies. What has it done? These are the things that the solution delivers. It is why the solution is so well accepted in the market. The time to resolution has been reduced by 70%. That's huge. Something that took you an hour or a day or a week, to reduce the time required by 70% is like you going back home early. You basically sleeping well and hoping that you don't get a call in the middle of the night, because the problem, if identified, the chances of it being resolved is 70% faster than what it used to be before they had the Riverbed solution implemented. The blind spots in the network. I mean, the network, the more you grow, the more complex it gets. It's the nature of how the network is. It could be on-prem. The moment you go hybrid, it could be between the private cloud and in your data center. It could be a public cloud spread out across AWS, Azure, Google, all of that, right? I mean, the more you grow, the more you innovate, the more you want to simplify, the more complex your ecosystem looks like. And that is where we come into picture. We can provide everything that I spoke about for on-prem, for the cloud, and for your virtual infra as well. So whether you're using a VMware, NSX, all of that, we go into both the north-south and the east-west. I can tell you exactly the intercommunication that happens between the VMs, between an app, web, and DB, where lies the problem, right? Now, the whole thing that we build, the banks that they spend money on building this beautiful ecosystem, best of the breed infra, the best of the breed, applications, and all of that is wide, basically to serve the end user. Now, the new and the most critical part of visibility is what you have built, this beautiful infra. How is my user who's supposed to actually use this entire thing? What's the user experience? What's my end customer experience who's using my mobile app? How is that end user who's sitting in the branch and using my application to service the length of customers who are standing in a queue? If the time taken for the end user to now service an end customer or an employee or any of that is not within the prescribed time of your business operations, it is loss of business for you, right? So improved user experience, and that is where we bring in the new element called as the end user experience monitoring, which is now monitoring the end user's performance, the applications running on that end user's desktop, laptop, and machine as to how is the experience using a user experience index. Now imagine you have 10,000 employees spread out geographically. Now, am I able to run something called as a commonality analysis? Am I able to understand that if there is a problem, if there is a call that I receive, and if at all it is not proactively already done so, and if I was to receive a call from an end user saying that I am having a problem with this application, I can actually use this solution to now find out, is the problem only with that one user? Probably using a Dell laptop, having 4 GB of memory, having a processor speed of XYZ, are all the Dell laptop users having the same problem? Is the problem now restricted to that one particular branch? Is it something which is within that entire geography? Can I do that using a solution sitting in my data center or sitting in the CIO's office and find out, looking at a geographical map, this is where the red hotspot looks like, and the problem is not restricted to a user, right? I can go as granular as putting an end user's name or an IP and trying to get to the root of the problem on the desktop machine and find out, is the Wi-Fi signal that that end user's machine is getting strong enough to be now able to service that application click? That's the granularity of monitoring that I'm talking about, right? Now, this is what the platform and the portfolio looks like, and this is what the underlying ecosystem that I spoke about, which will have users, devices, applications, network, infra, and how it all comes together. This is the erstwhile, and probably we have now not done a great job of convincing and moving and coming back to the customers and saying that application performance monitoring, network performance monitoring, infra monitoring, end user monitoring, this is not the way to move forward. That itself is a siloed approach which has created more complexity and added a problem to a problem, not a solution to a problem. And today, Riverbed finds itself in a unique position, in a strong position, in ahead of the line position, good or bad, but the only solution vendor in the market today which can now collect metrics and does not have the siloed approach and has a unified observability approach to bring metrics from all of it. So the new requirements that need to come from the customers is not asking to build a siloed approach of looking at, should I buy a new APM? Should I buy a new NPM? Should I buy a new infra monitoring? The idea should be, how do I now bring the entire solution together and look at one single pane of glass, not pane, but the pane of glass, to solve the problem that I can potentially have in my ecosystem, right? What has it done? Network traffic analysis, application troubleshooting. I'm not going to get into the standard stuff of it. It is now slowly touching upon a very important topic which is happening across the banking and the financial space, and it is very, very important, which is the security aspect of it. A packet is what we call the ultimate truth. It holds the data, which is raw in nature, has the payload metadata for everything that is traversing through your ecosystem. That's the same packet that an SIEM solution that a security vendor will use to understand what is happening in the security side of things, right? It is the same packet that we capture and analyze to tell you the performance issues related to the network and the application and the likes of it. Now, what if we bring it together? Can we now bring certain aspects of security into the performance monitoring itself? If I am now able to figure out there is a constant ping happening on a certain port, on a certain router, which is an anomaly, which is not the usual, and it has not happened probably the last Monday or the last month, and it is an unusual behavior that probably triggers within my performance monitoring solution a security anomaly which says that this could be a potential attack, and that is the reason why I now need to look into this anomaly and figure out that could it be a potential security issue that could turn into a breach, right? So how performance monitoring now slowly borders around security analysis as well is what we have built into it from a network security aspect of threat detection, threat hunting, incident response, again going back to what we need to do when it detects a particular anomaly in the ecosystem, right? Where can it be used? A lot of customers are moving or migrating from on-prem to cloud. Now, do you have a predictive analysis to say for sure that when I move this application from on-prem, which is just captive infra, and move it to the cloud, how is it going to impact my performance? You would possibly know after you've done it. Is it a possibility that you can try and do that prior to doing the migration? Yes. That's what we are helping customers with. Cloud network traffic analysis. Now, it's basically everything to do with what you're going to use when you move into the cloud. You move from a captive bandwidth or a captive network to now start using internet as your connectivity to access the same business critical applications that you were all this while using from your data center. Can I do that cloud network traffic analysis for you? And so on and so forth, right? Well, this is how we summarize the whole thing. The best data, which is when I say data democratization from using the metrics across all the metrics that we spoke about from an application, infra, or a network, and how do we use the best of that, put it together, have the best analysis, and use it for the best insights. When I say insights, how I'm changing the whole paradigm of visibility and using that same to make it into actionable insights. When I say actionable insights, is where there is a bit of automation and predictability built into it, saying that if this happens, what am I supposed to do? It's pre-built into the system, which takes away a lot of manual effort and the resources now to do things which can happen using automated scripts. Just a few customer testimonies on what is their experience of having used the Riverbed visibility and the observability solution in their ecosystems. How can we help you? I mean, basically everything that I spoke is something that we have already delivered. We have delivered it to the largest bank in the country, the most complex of the networks. One of the very eminent speakers just prior to me said 24,000 transactions per second in an ecosystem can tell you how complex and stressed that network can be, and we monitor that for them across the entire ecosystem of data centers spread across 4 to 5 of them geographically, right? Improvement in MTTR, no downtime. Now this is something, it's a statement, I can't really name the person, but the fact that somebody sitting up there and talking to somebody from the ministry saying that in the last 3 months, we have had 0 downtime in the history of our bank. Because we've been able to see everything proactively and predict and able to resolve those issues before it gets to a point where now it is flagged off and goes in as a ticket, which now needs to be monitored and reported back to the compliance director, right? Improved user experiences, infrastructure change management. Imagine a customer who's got 10,000 laptops and as part of a 5-year refresh would naturally just move from a 2 GB to a 4 GB to a 6 GB, not because they know statistically is there a user experience issue because they are on a 2 GB. It is a natural upgrade process that they do, which costs probably a couple of millions of dollars, not statistically knowing is it required or not required. Is it required on a Dell model or is it also required on the Lenovo? Do I have statistical analysis to tell me and guide me and predict that this is what needs to be done and that is the money that I can save if I either push it to the next year or later, right? Things like that. Reduce security risks, etc. Now this is where we bring in the end user experience and the application monitoring into picture, because they are all named differently at different points in time. They all come under the Alluvio platform today. It comes organically and inorganically through acquisitions. So that's what it talks about. So earlier I spoke about this aspect of network performance monitoring. This is everything to do with the digital experience management and monitoring, which is the APM and the end user experience, right? How it can collectively come together and provide you actionable insights. And this, again, I want to reiterate. Riverbed is the only solution provider in the industry today which can do full fidelity telemetry capture for the packets and the flows, which means that not a single transaction is lost to be monitored for performance issues in your ecosystem. That's the beauty of what Riverbed brings to the table. And this is the reality of what it is today and in the ecosystem that we live in. Office, work from home, work from anywhere. It could be accessing your Salesforce, your business applications on your mobile phone, and how you can create these synthetic testing scenarios to figure out what could be the possible impact of that on my revenue, on my cost, on my productivity, and the risk that is associated with it, right? A whole lot of alliances that we work with. That is why it makes it easier for us to work in a cloud environment, in a virtual environment, and the likes of that, because we actually integrate into each of these applications and networks and the alliances that we have, so that we are able to provide a seamless capture and analysis of the data across the on-prem or the cloud environments and the virtual environments as well, yeah. So a lot of what I spoke about sounds more like how we are solving IT issues and IT operational issues, but a lot of that kind of also gets into the business issues and how we are helping business owners look into these dashboards and the portal that we provide to look at business use cases. And we have live use cases where a very large security firm using a traditional application which was custom built for them was not able to accept orders on their platform to now confirm an order for buying shares and selling shares and stuff like that, right? And how that business owner was basically losing revenue just because they were not able to pinpoint and tell them exactly what is causing this issue and why is there a business loss to that particular department or to that particular within the banking fraternity. And it came out that the application itself was not geared up to now take the best of the advantages of them having moved to an infra which had multi-threading, multi-processing, and all of that built into it, and the application was still using traditional approach of sending sequential data and writing and reading the orders that are coming in. And when we pointed out, obviously there was a bad a backlash saying that this could not be the case, but eventually when they looked into the statistical data, the proof that we provided is when they made sure that there was a line of code that was changed to make sure that they don't have that problem. And I'm talking about millions and millions of dollars by that downtime for that one day for that particular organization. It's everything that we have delivered for some of the largest customers. So with that, I would like to thank you all once again for this opportunity. We do have a booth outside for any queries or clarifications of how we do it and what's the advantage each of those organizations have got. Please feel free. My team is out there to help you out. And thank you once again.